The big meeting hall was full of noise. Thousands of different aliens sat in their special seats, arguing about trade routes and territory rights. The Galactic Council had been running things for over 2,000 years. Every species had their place, their voice, their power, except the humans. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the small podium reserved for minor species. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore a plain blue uniform with no fancy decorations. Around her, the other ambassadors looked like warriors or kings. The Crag had thick armor and sharp teeth. The Zalathi wore flowing robes covered in jewels. Even the peaceful Etherians had elegant crystal formations growing from their heads. Sarah looked ordinary, human, small. "Please," she said into the microphone. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the hall. "We just want to discuss the mining rights in the Outer Rim. Our people need those resources to build homes for our growing colonies." A loud laugh came from the Crag section. Warlord Grakthul stood up, his massive body casting shadows across several rows of seats. "Humans want mining rights? What will you give us for them?" "Your pretty words." More laughter filled the hall. Sarah waited for it to die down. She had been doing this job for 15 years. She was used to the laughter. "We offer fair trade agreements," she said. "Our technology has helped many species improve their communication systems and medical equipment. We can share more innovations in exchange for access to the Kepler Belt asteroids." "Technology?" The Zalathi ambassador's voice was like music, but her words were sharp. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. Your military ranks last in every assessment. What could you possibly offer that we cannot make ourselves?" Sarah's hands moved behind her back. The other ambassadors could not see how her fingers pressed together, knuckles white with tension. It was an old human habit when they were trying to stay calm. "Please," she said again. "We don't want any trouble. We just want to work together. To build something good for everyone." The Crag warlord slammed his fist on his desk. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. "You want without earning. You beg without strength. Why should the strong listen to the weak?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment. In that moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something that made a few of the older ambassadors shift in their seats. They had seen that look before in other species, usually right before those species became extinct. But Sarah just smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "Please don't make us mad," she said quietly. "You really don't want to see what happens when humans get angry." The hall erupted in laughter again. Even some of the security guards were chuckling. The idea that humans could be dangerous was the funniest thing anyone had heard in years. Sarah gathered her papers and walked away from the podium. Her footsteps were quiet on the metal floor. As she reached the exit, she stopped and turned back. "We've been asking nicely for 300 years, she said. Her voice was still soft, but now it carried something else, something cold. "We're very good at asking nicely. We really hope we never have to stop." The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. In the hall, the laughter continued. The ambassadors went back to their important discussions about who controlled what parts of space. None of them noticed that the human colonies had been expanding slowly, steadily for decades. None of them paid attention to the fact that human ships, while small, were everywhere. Trading, exploring, helping with disasters, always present, always useful. None of them wondered why a species with weak military power had managed to spread across more systems than any other single species in the galaxy. And none of them thought to ask why humanity's military assessments were always done by humans themselves, with numbers that seemed almost too perfect in their limitations. 3 months later, the Crag began attacking human merchant ships. The first attack happened near the Vega system. A small human cargo vessel carrying medical supplies to a colony was destroyed by a Crag patrol. All 23 crew members died. Sarah appeared before the council again. This time her uniform was black, a mourning color among humans. "The Crag destroyed the merchant ship Peaceful Dawn," she reported. 23 civilians are dead. "We ask the council to intervene and prevent further attacks." Warlord Grakthul was not apologetic. "Your ships entered Crag space without permission. We defended our territory." "The shipping lanes were marked as neutral," Sarah replied. "They have been neutral for over a century." "Not anymore." The warlord's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. "Crag space grows. Weak species move aside or get moved." Sarah's hands were behind her back again. This time, several ambassadors noticed how still she had become. Like a statue or a predator deciding whether to strike? Please reconsider, she said. We don't want this conflict to escalate. There are peaceful solutions to territorial disputes. Your peaceful solutions are why you stay weak, the warlord replied. The strong take what they want. The weak ask for permission. For 6 months, the attacks continued. Human ships were destroyed regularly. The few that fought back were overwhelmed by superior numbers and firepower. Each time, Sarah appeared before the council with the same request for intervention. Each time she was told that humans should defend themselves better. Each time her warning grew more urgent. Please, she said after the 50th attack, we have offered territorial concessions. We have offered shared technology. We have offered trade agreements worth trillions of credits. Make them stop. Because if we have to stop them ourselves, she paused, looking directly at each ambassador in turn. You will not like how that story ends. The Etherian ambassador, one of the few species that considered humans friends, leaned forward. What do you mean, Ambassador Chen? Sarah's smile was sad. We mean that humanity has been very, very patient. We have been polite for 3 centuries. We have shared our knowledge, helped in disasters, avoided conflicts, and asked nicely for basic respect. But patience has limits. Are you threatening the council? The Zelathi ambassador's voice was sharp with anger. No, Sarah said quietly. We're warning you. There's a difference. The attacks stopped being random the next week. The Crag began targeting human civilian centers, colonies, research stations, places where families lived and children played. Sarah's last appearance before the council was different. She wore her black uniform, but this time it was not for mourning. This time it looked like a military uniform. Simple, practical, efficient. Her hands were not behind her back. New Geneva Station was attacked yesterday, she said. 30,000 civilians? Scientists, teachers, doctors, children. The attack was broadcast across the galaxy as entertainment. The hall was quiet. Even the Crag delegation seemed uncomfortable. We have tried everything, Sarah continued. We have offered everything. We have begged, pleaded, negotiated, and compromised for 300 years. We asked you to help us maintain peace. You refused. She picked up a small device from the podium. It looked like a simple communication device, but somehow it seemed more important. This is our formal resignation from galactic civilization, she said. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relationships. We are closing our borders and recalling all human personnel from non-human space. The Etherian ambassador stood up quickly. Sarah, please. Don't let the actions of one species destroy centuries of cooperation. Sarah looked at her old friend with genuine sadness. We tried to build something beautiful with all of you. We really did. But you've made it clear that kindness is seen as weakness, and cooperation is seen as cowardice. She pressed a button on the device. Somewhere in human space, signals began transmitting to hidden facilities that had been waiting for 3 centuries. We're done asking nicely, Sarah said. Now you get to learn what humanity is like when we stop saying please. She walked out of the hall for the last time. Behind her, the council erupted in confused voices and worried discussions. They had no idea that they had just witnessed the end of an era. The age of human patience was over. The age of consequences was about to begin. The first thing that happened was nothing. For 3 days after Ambassador Chen's final speech, human ships simply vanished. Not destroyed, not captured. They just disappeared from sensors across the galaxy. Cargo vessels that had been delivering supplies suddenly weren't there anymore. Passenger ships carrying human workers back to their homeworlds were gone. Even the small human shuttles that helped with docking procedures at major space stations had vanished without a trace. The Crag warlord Grakthul was pleased. See? The humans run like frightened animals. They know they cannot fight us, but other species were starting to worry. The Etherian collective depended on human cargo ships to move their crystalline art between systems. The Vegan Trade Union relied on human engineers to maintain their mining equipment. Even the proud Zelathi Empire used human communication networks to coordinate their vast territories. Within a week, interstellar commerce began to slow down. Computer systems that had been running perfectly for decades started having strange problems. Navigation equipment gave wrong coordinates. Medical devices stopped working properly. Even simple things like coffee makers and air recyclers began to malfunction. It's just coincidence, the Zelathi ambassador insisted. Old equipment breaks down. We'll build new ones. But the problems kept getting worse. Captain Rex Martinez of the cargo ship Steady Progress was one of the last humans to leave non-human space. He had been delivering food supplies to a Etherian colony when the recall order came through. As he prepared his ship for departure, the Etherian colony administrator approached him. "Rex, please. Our food processors depend on your shipments. Without them, we'll starve." Rex had known Administrator Veltar for 15 years. They had shared meals, stories about their families, jokes about their different species. Veltar was a good person who had always treated humans with respect. "I'm sorry, old friend," Rex said. "The order comes from Earth Command. All humans out of non-human space immediately." "But why? The Crag attacked you, not us. We've always been allies." Rex was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. "Because when we asked for help, your government voted to remain neutral in the conflict. When human children were being killed, you chose politics over friendship. We couldn't risk war with the Crag over human lives." Rex finished the sentence. "Yeah, we know." The Steady Progress left that afternoon. Veltar watched it go, wondering if he would ever see his human friend again. All across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. Human workers, traders, engineers, and diplomats were packing up and leaving. Some went sadly, saying goodbye to friends they might never see again. Others left in anger, tired of being treated as second-class citizens. A few left with cold efficiency, as if they were following orders they had always expected to receive. The economic collapse started slowly, then accelerated. Supply chains that had been built over centuries suddenly had missing links. The Corvan Republic discovered that their entire fleet used human-designed navigation computers. Without human technicians to maintain them, ships started getting lost in hyperspace. The hegemony of 5 suns found that their medical centers couldn't function because human-made components were failing throughout their equipment. But the real shock came when the bills arrived. Every human company, every human contractor, every human service provider sent final invoices for their work. The amounts were staggering. 3 centuries of accumulated costs, licensing fees, and service contracts that had been provided at massive discounts or for free. The galaxy had been living on human charity for so long that they had forgotten there was supposed to be payment. The Zalathi Empire received a bill for 847 trillion credits for communication, network usage alone. The Crag hegemony owed 2.3 trillion credits for navigational data that had kept their ships from crashing into stars. Even minor species found themselves owing millions for services they had taken for granted. "This is impossible," the Zalathi ambassador protested at an emergency council session. "These amounts would bankrupt entire star systems." "Then you should have read the contracts," came the reply from an automated human message system. "Payment is due within 30 standard days. After that, compound interest begins accruing at rates specified in the original agreements." The council tried to contact human leadership. Their calls went unanswered. They sent diplomatic messages. They came back marked addressee unknown. They even tried to reach individual humans who had worked with them for years. Nothing. Humanity had gone completely silent. Then, the sensor readings started coming in. Long-range observatories detected massive construction activity in human space. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology were appearing near human worlds. Ships larger than space stations were being built at impossible speeds. When other species tried to send spy drones to investigate, the drones simply vanished. "What are they building?" the Etherian representative asked nervously. Nobody knew. The first Crag patrol to disappear was near the Vega system. The patrol ship Skullcrusher had been investigating reports of strange energy readings near the old human trade routes. They transmitted a routine check-in at 14:30 ship time. They were supposed to check in again at 18:30. They never did. A search squadron was sent to find them. The squadron found nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that the Skullcrusher had ever existed. It was as if the ship and its crew of 40 warriors had simply been erased from reality. More Crag ships began to vanish. Always near human space, always without any sign of what had happened to them. Warlord Grakthul ordered increased patrols. "The humans are using cowards' tricks," he announced. "Sneak attacks and hidden weapons. When we find them, we will crush them." But the patrols found nothing to crush. They found empty space where human colonies used to be. They found automated defense platforms that no longer responded to signals. They found silence. The silence was worse than any battle cry. 3 months after the human withdrawal, long-range sensors detected something new, a massive object moving through deep space toward the crag border. It was larger than a moon, darker than the space around it, and it was moving fast. When the crag sent a fleet to intercept it, they got their first communication from humanity in months. "This is the HDFS Righteous Fury," a calm human voice said. "You are in violation of human space. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and leave this system." Admiral Thurrock, commanding the Crag Third Fleet, laughed. "One ship against his 40 vessels? Even a large ship couldn't stand against those odds. Human ship, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed," he transmitted back. 20 seconds, the human voice replied. Admiral Thurrock ordered his ships to attack formation. 40 of the finest Crag warships armed with weapons that could crack planets moved to surround the human vessel. 10 seconds. "Fire everything," Admiral Thurrock commanded. What happened next was recorded by a Crag observation post 12 light hours away. Their long-range cameras captured the entire battle. It lasted 18 seconds. The human ship, if it could be called a ship, didn't use recognizable weapons. It didn't fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, space itself seemed to twist around the Crag fleet. Reality bent and folded, and when it straightened out again, there was nothing left where 40 warships had been nothing but empty space and the distant echo of Admiral Thurrock's final scream. The Righteous Fury continued on its course as if nothing had happened. The recording was transmitted to Crag High Command, then to the Galactic Council, then to every government in known space. Within hours, every species in the galaxy had seen what happened when someone ignored humanity's polite request to leave. The Council called another emergency session. This time, the hall was not full of confident voices and political maneuvering. This time, ambassadors whispered nervously and glanced at the empty human section with new understanding. "We need to contact them," the Etherian ambassador said. "This has gone too far." "Contact them how?" the Zalathi representative replied. "They won't answer our calls. They've withdrawn from all diplomatic relations. Then we send someone to human space. A neutral party. Someone who can negotiate." The Corvin ambassador shook his head. After what just happened, who would be willing to enter human space uninvited? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Outside, more reports were coming in. Human ships, if they were ships, were appearing throughout the galaxy. Not attacking, not conquering, just present, watching, waiting. Each one carried the same message. "You are in violation of human space. Leave immediately or face the consequences." Most species chose to leave. The Crag, proud and stubborn, chose to fight. It was not a fight. It was an extermination. Within 2 months, the Crag hegemony, which had controlled over 400 star systems and commanded fleets that terrorized half the galaxy, simply stopped existing. Their worlds were empty but intact. Their cities were powered down but undamaged. Their people were gone, relocated to prison worlds where they would face trial for centuries of war crimes. The Crag military, which had numbered in the millions, had been reduced to nothing without a single human casualty being reported. The galaxy learned a new kind of fear. Not fear of conquest or destruction, but fear of judgment. Fear that they had been weighed and measured by a species they had ignored and found wanting. In the empty halls of the data arrived without warning. Every computer system in the galaxy, government networks, private databases, media servers, academic archives, received the same massive download at exactly the same time. The files were enormous, containing petabytes of information that should have taken years to collect and organize. Yet somehow they had appeared simultaneously across thousands of worlds and millions of systems. The header of each file was simple: 300 years of observation, final report. Below that, a single line: by order of the Human-Terran Defense Forces, all species are hereby informed of their actual status in galactic civilization. Minister Talven of the Zalathi Empire was one of the first to open the files. As the head of Zalathi intelligence, he had access to some of the most sophisticated computer systems in the galaxy. But even his advanced security networks had been bypassed as easily as unlocking a door. The first file he opened made his blood run cold. Was titled Zalathi Empire Military Assessment and contained detailed blueprints. of every Zalathi warship, space station, and defensive installation. Not just current designs, but classified projects that were still in development, weapon systems that were supposed to be secret, strategic plans that only the highest levels of government were supposed to know. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the date stamps. The information went back centuries. The humans had been watching, listening, and cataloging everything for longer than most Zalathi had been alive. With shaking hands, Talvin opened another file, Zalathi Empire Criminal Activities Report. What he found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. Every atrocity, every cover-up, every dirty secret of the Zalathi government was laid out in horrifying detail. The slave labor camps they operated in distant systems, the genocide of the whisper cloud entities that they had blamed on natural causes, the illegal experiments on primitive species, the corruption that went all the way to the imperial throne, all of it documented, all of it proven, all of it signed, sealed, and witnessed by human observers who had been present for every crime. Talvin reached for his communication device to warn the Emperor, then stopped. If the humans had this information, they probably also had records of every communication he had ever sent. They would know he was reading the files. They would know what he was planning to do next. For the first time in his long career, the spy master felt like he was the one being watched. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out in every government building, military installation, and corporate headquarters. Leaders who had thought their secrets were safe discovered that humanity had been taking notes for 3 centuries. The Corvan Republic found detailed records of their illegal weapons sales to terrorist groups. The hegemony of Five Suns discovered that humans knew about their plan to assassinate the Etherian leadership. Even minor species found files documenting crimes they thought no one else knew about. But the military assessments were what truly terrified the Galactic leadership. President Kextal of the Vegan Trade Union stared at his species file in disbelief. According to the human analysis, vegan military forces were technologically inferior, strategically predictable, and tactically incompetent. Their best warships were rated as suitable for police actions against unarmed civilian populations only. The assessment was ruthlessly detailed. Every weakness in vegan ship design, every flaw in their command structure, every vulnerability in their defensive networks was cataloged and explained. Battle plans were provided showing exactly how human forces could conquer vegan space in approximately 6 hours. 6 hours. To conquer an empire that had taken 8 centuries to build. The Etherian Collective, despite being humanity's closest allies, found their own assessment equally disturbing. Human analysts had identified 17 different ways to disrupt Etherian crystal technology, including methods that could be implemented using common industrial chemicals. Even worse, the humans had apparently tested these methods. The file included video recordings of Etherian technology being systematically disabled during joint training exercises that the Etherians had thought were friendly. Cooperation. As governments across the galaxy absorbed the implications of what they were reading, pattern began to emerge. Humanity hadn't just been observing galactic civilization. They had been studying it like scientists examining bacteria under a microscope. Every species, every government, every military force had been analyzed, categorized, and rated on a scale of potential threat to human interests. Most species ranked somewhere between negligible and minor annoyance. A few reached the level of moderate concern. None were rated as actual threat. The Krag hegemony, which had terrorized half the galaxy with their military might, was listed as militarily primitive but potentially dangerous to civilian populations. Their defeat was described in a single paragraph. Krag tactical doctrine relies on overwhelming force against inferior opponents. When faced with superior technology and strategy, complete collapse is inevitable within 30-60 days. The actual time frame had been 53 days, but perhaps the most disturbing files were the ones labeled integration protocols. These documents outlined humanity's long-term plan for galactic civilization. For 3 centuries, humans had been slowly, patiently guiding other species toward a future of cooperation and mutual respect. They had shared technology to prevent wars, provided aid during disasters to build goodwill, and maintained trade relationships to create economic interdependence. It hadn't been charity. It had been a carefully orchestrated plan to create a stable, peaceful galaxy. The plan had included contingencies for every possible outcome. If species proved willing to work together, humanity would gradually reveal more advanced technology and guide them toward a golden age of exploration and discovery. If species proved too aggressive or destructive, they would be contained and slowly educated until they could join galactic civilization properly. And if species proved irredeemably hostile to the idea of peaceful coexistence, well, everyone had seen what happened to the Crag. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Human-Alien Relations at Earth Central Command, appeared in a recorded message that accompanied the files. She sat behind a simple desk in what looked like a normal office. She could have been any human bureaucrat delivering a routine report. For 300 years, she said, humanity has attempted to guide galactic civilization toward a more peaceful and prosperous future. We have shared our knowledge, provided aid during crises, and consistently advocated for diplomatic solutions to conflicts. She paused, looking directly into the camera with tired eyes. We have done this because we believe that every species has the potential for growth and improvement. We wanted to be wrong about some of our assessments. We hoped that, given time and opportunity, galactic civilization would evolve beyond its current state of constant conflict and exploitation. Another pause. When she continued, her voice was colder. Recent events have demonstrated that our optimism was misplaced. The attack on New Geneva Station, combined with the galactic community's refusal to intervene, has proven that the current system cannot be reformed through peaceful means. Dr. Vasquez picked up a tablet and glanced at it briefly. Effective immediately. Humanity is withdrawing from the current galactic civilization. We will no longer provide technology, aid, or expertise to species that have demonstrated their inability to value life and peace. We will no longer pretend that we are equals with civilizations that choose barbarism over progress. She set the tablet down and looked directly into the camera again. This is not a declaration of war. This is a statement of fact. Humanity will defend its citizens and interests using whatever means necessary. Other species are welcome to continue their current behaviors within their own territories. They are not welcome to involve humanity in their conflicts, threaten human citizens, or expect human assistance with problems of their own making. The message ended with a simple statement that would be remembered for centuries. You have seen what we are capable of when we choose to stop being nice. Do not make us choose again. Within hours of the file's release, 3 things became clear to every government in the galaxy. First, humanity had never been the weak, dependent species they had appeared to be. They had been the adult in the room, patiently waiting for everyone else to grow up. Second, every government, military, and organization in known space was completely vulnerable to human action. Their security, their secrets, their very existence depended on human tolerance. Third, that tolerance had just run out. The age of human patience was over. The age of human judgment had begun, and no one in the galaxy was sure they would survive the verdict. The message came at dawn across 1,000 worlds. It was broadcast on every frequency, displayed on every screen, and transmitted directly into the neural implants of species that used them. There was no way to block it, no way to ignore it, no way to pretend it hadn't happened. Citizens of the galaxy, the voice said. It was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its certainty. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Terran Defense Forces. For 300 years, humanity has watched, waited, and hoped that galactic civilization would choose to evolve beyond its current state of barbarism. That hope has proven to be misplaced. The image that accompanied the voice showed Admiral Chen standing on the bridge of what could only be described as a fortress that happened to fly through space. Behind her, through massive viewing windows, other ships were visible. Ships that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy, hanging in space like sleeping giants. The files you received yesterday contained 3 centuries of evidence documenting the crimes, corruption, and cruelty that define current galactic civilization. This evidence will now be acted upon. Admiral Chen moved to a large display showing a map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas that were under human observation. Yellow zones indicated species that were being given opportunities for reform. Black zones. There were more black zones than anyone had expected. Effective immediately, the following actions will be taken. Chen continued. All war criminals identified in the evidence files will be arrested and transported to neutral facilities for trial. All illegal operations from slave labor camps to biological weapons facilities will be shut down. All species engaged in genocide, systematic oppression, or aggressive expansion will be contained to their home systems until they demonstrate genuine reform. She paused, letting the implications sink in. This is not negotiable. This is not subject to debate or appeal. This is justice, administered by the only species that apparently cares enough to enforce it. The broadcast ended with coordinates for surrender facilities and instructions for compliance. Non-compliance, the message noted, would result in immediate corrective action. No one wanted to find out what that meant. The arrests began 6 hours later. General Thurvok of the Krag Remnant Forces was the first. He had been hiding in a bunker deep beneath the surface of Krag Prime, protected by layers of military security, and the assumption that no one could reach him there. He was wrong. The bunker's blast doors, rated to withstand planet-killing weapons, opened quietly. Two figures in black armor walked through corridors that should have been filled with guards. The guards were unconscious, unharmed, but completely incapacitated by some unknown technology. General Thurvok reached for his sidearm as the figures entered his command center. His hand stopped moving before he could draw the weapon, not because he was afraid, but because his muscles simply wouldn't obey him. "General Thurvok," one of the figures said, their voice filtered through a helmet that revealed nothing. "You are under arrest for war crimes committed against civilian populations in 17 star systems. You will be transported to a neutral facility for trial." "You cannot do this," Thurvok snarled, though his body remained frozen. "I am a military leader of a sovereign." "The Krag hegemony no longer exists," the other figure interrupted. "Your sovereignty was revoked when you chose to target civilians. Please remain calm during transport." A shimmering field surrounded Thurvok and he vanished. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Emperor Velthak of the Zalathi, who had personally ordered the genocide of the Whisper Clouds, was taken from his heavily guarded palace. Crime Lord Kexival of the Orion Syndicate was arrested during a board meeting on his flagship. President Morgan of the Centauri Republic was apprehended while trying to flee to a non-extradition world. None of the security measures, bodyguards, or hiding places made any difference. The humans found everyone they were looking for, and they took them with the same calm efficiency they had shown for centuries of diplomacy. But the arrests were just the beginning. The Vegan trade union discovered that their biological weapons research facility on Kepler 442b had been completely dismantled overnight. Not destroyed, dismantled. Every piece of equipment had been carefully removed. Every sample had been safely contained, and every researcher had been relocated to a comfortable facility where they could pursue non-military applications of their expertise. The hegemony of 5 Suns found that their slave labor camps had been emptied. The slaves had been freed, provided with medical care, and given transportation to worlds of their choosing. The overseers had been arrested. The facilities had been converted into rehabilitation centers for other victims of oppression. The Corvin Republic's illegal arms dealing network simply stopped functioning. Every hidden weapons cache was discovered and secured. Every black market dealer was arrested. Every customer who had purchased illegal weapons received a polite notice that their contracts were now void and their payments would be refunded. It was surgical, precise, overwhelming, and it was happening everywhere at once. Species that had thought themselves safe because they were far from human space discovered that distance meant nothing to human technology. Governments that had believed their crimes were too well hidden found that humanity had been watching for decades. Military leaders who had assumed their forces could resist human intervention learned that resistance was not possible. The most shocking realization came when the humans began revealing the true extent of their infiltration of galactic society. Dr. Marcus Webb, who had been the chief medical officer at the Etherian Central Hospital for 20 years, removed his disguise to reveal human features. Commander Zektel of the Zalathi Imperial Guard turned out to be Lieutenant Commander Jennifer Walsh of Human Intelligence. Even Merchant Captain Grovthak, who had been selling supplies to the Krag for 15 years, was actually Captain Robert Santos, gathering information on Krag military capabilities. The humans hadn't just been watching galactic civilization from the outside. They had been living inside it, working alongside other species, building relationships and gathering intelligence for generations. Some of these revelations were heartbreaking. Families who had considered their human friends to be genuine companions felt betrayed. Colleagues who had worked together for years suddenly questioned every interaction they had ever had, but other revelations showed the true nature of human sacrifice. Dr. Webb had saved thousands of lives during his years at the hospital, never revealing his true nature, even when it would have been easier to use human medical technology. Commander Walsh had prevented 3 assassination attempts against Zalathi leadership, despite the fact that her species was secretly monitoring their crimes. The humans had lived among other species not just as spies, but as protectors. They had spent decades, sometimes entire lifetimes, maintaining their cover while working to make galactic civilization better from within. The economic collapse that followed was swift and total. Every piece of human technology, every human-designed system, every human-maintained network began shutting down in a carefully orchestrated sequence. It wasn't sabotage, it was withdrawal. The humans were simply taking their toys and going home. Interstellar communication networks that had connected thousands of worlds went dark. Transportation systems that had moved cargo across the galaxy stopped functioning. Medical devices that had saved millions of lives powered down permanently. For the first time in centuries, species were forced to confront the reality of their technological dependence. The Zalathi discovered that their entire military command structure relied on human-designed quantum computers. The Corvan Republic found that their agriculture depended on human-engineered soil treatments. Even the peaceful Etherians realized that their crystal technology had been enhanced by human innovations they had never recognized, but the most devastating blow came when the humans revealed the true extent of galactic civilization's debt. For 3 centuries. Humanity had been providing goods and services at cost, absorbing losses and subsidizing the development of other species. They had done this quietly, without fanfare, disguising charity as trade agreements and aid as mutual cooperation. Now they wanted payment. The bills were astronomical. The Zalathi Empire alone owed 2.7 quadrillion credits for 3 centuries of subsidized technology and services. The Corvan Republic's debt exceeded the gross domestic product of their entire civilization. Even minor species found themselves owing more than their worlds were worth. "This is impossible," the Emergency Galactic Council protested in a desperate transmission to human space. "These amounts cannot be paid. You would bankrupt the entire galaxy." The human response was delivered by Admiral Chen, standing in front of a display showing the true scope of human industrial capability. Behind her, massive construction facilities stretched to the horizon, building ships and technologies that defied current understanding of physics. "The amounts are not impossible," she said calmly. "They represent the actual cost of the goods and services we have provided. The fact that your civilizations cannot afford to pay for what you have received merely proves our point about your economic sustainability." She gestured to the display behind her. "However, we are not unreasonable. Payment can be made in several ways. You can provide raw materials at fair market prices." 25 years after the silence began, former Etherian Administrator Veltar stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching human engineers complete the reconstruction. The station was beautiful now, more beautiful than it had ever been. Crystal spires grew alongside metal corridors, creating a harmony between Etherian artistry and human engineering that neither species could have achieved alone. It was also a memorial. The names of the 30,000 humans who had died in the original attack were carved into every wall, written in every language spoken in the galaxy. The children's choir that had been silenced forever was remembered in a garden where no sound was allowed except the soft music of wind through specially designed trees. Veltar had been one of the first aliens permitted to visit human space after the reckoning. Not because he was important, but because he had tried to help when it mattered. When the Crag had begun their attacks on human civilians, Veltar had spoken out in the Etherian Assembly. He had argued for intervention, for protection of the innocents. He had been overruled by politicians who feared Crag retaliation. His reward for trying was this: a chance to see what the galaxy might have become if more beings had chosen courage over comfort. "It's different than I expected," he said to his guide, a human woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, who served as New Geneva's Director of Interspecies Relations. "Different how?" Dr. Kim asked, genuinely curious. She had been one of the children who survived the original attack. evacuated in the final moments before the station's destruction. Now she had returned to help build something better from the ashes. Less angry, Veltar admitted. I thought after everything that happened that humans would want revenge, would want to see us suffer as you suffered. Dr. Kim was quiet for a moment, watching the engineers work. Human and Etherian technicians were collaborating on a new type of defensive system that could protect civilian installations without threatening anyone else. It was typical of the new human approach, overwhelming capability deployed only for protection. We were angry, she said finally. We were furious. Do you know what it's like to lose your childhood home, your friends, your sense of safety, and then watch the galaxy shrug and move on? To see the people who could have helped choose politics over justice? Veltar's crystalline features dimmed with shame. I can't imagine. But anger without purpose is just destruction, Dr. Kim continued. We learned that lesson long ago, when humans were still fighting each other instead of exploring the stars. Rage can motivate you to change things, but only wisdom can build something better. They walked through corridors where children played. Human children, Etherian children, even some young Corvan refugees whose families had sought sanctuary in human space. The kids didn't seem to care about species differences. They just played together, laughed together, learned together. This is what we wanted, Dr. Kim said, watching a human girl help an Etherian boy reach a toy that had gotten stuck on a high shelf. This is what we tried to build for 3 centuries. A place where people could live together without fear, without prejudice, without the strong preying on the weak. But the cost, Veltar whispered. So many civilizations collapsed. So many people suffered when your support was withdrawn. Dr. Kim stopped walking and turned to face him directly. Her expression was not unkind, but it was uncompromising. The cost of maintaining civilizations that operated through oppression and exploitation, the cost of subsidizing governments that committed genocide while we provided their technology, the cost of watching our children die while our so-called allies chose neutrality. She gestured toward a wall display showing the current state of the galaxy. Some areas were marked in green, stable, peaceful, prosperous. Others were yellow, recovering, improving, working toward better governance. A few were still red, isolated, contained, dealing with the consequences of their own choices. We didn't cause those civilizations to collapse, Dr. Kim said. We just stopped preventing their collapse. The difference is important. The tour continued through laboratories where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that would have seemed like magic a generation ago. Medical treatments that could cure diseases that had plagued entire species. Agricultural techniques that could make barren worlds bloom. Energy systems that could power civilizations without destroying their environments. All of it was being shared freely with species that had earned humanity's trust. How do we earn it? Veltar asked suddenly. How does a species prove they deserve this partnership? Dr. Kim smiled, and for the first time since they had met, she looked genuinely hopeful. You start by being honest about your past mistakes, she said. The Etherian Collective has done that. Your leaders admitted to the slave labor camps, disbanded the operations, and are working to make reparations to the victims. That's a good start. They paused at another memorial wall, this one dedicated to victims of Etherian crimes during the Old Era. Veltar recognized some of the names, beings his government had claimed were criminals or terrorists when they were actually just people who had opposed injustice. Then you prove you've learned from those mistakes, Dr. Kim continued. You change your laws, your culture, your priorities. You choose justice over profit, truth over comfort, protection of the innocent over political convenience. And if we fail, if we fall back into old patterns? Dr. Kim's expression became serious again. Then you join the species in the red zones, isolated until you're ready to try again. Humanity has patience, but we're no longer naive. We've learned to verify trust instead of simply granting it. They reached the end of the tour at a conference room where representatives from 12 different species were working together on a charter for a new galactic organization, not a council where the strong dominated the weak, but a cooperative where membership required demonstrating genuine commitment to peace and justice. Humans chaired the meetings, but they didn't dominate them. Instead, they served as mediators, guides, and when necessary, the conscience of the group. When discussions became heated, human representatives would quietly remind everyone of the principles they had agreed to uphold. When compromises threatened to sacrifice justice for expedience, human voices would ask the hard questions that forced deeper consideration. "This is our new role," Dr. Kim explained as they watched the proceedings. "Not rulers, not conquerors, but guardians, I suppose. We ensure that civilization develops in a direction that protects the innocent and promotes genuine progress. And if someone refuses to accept human guardianship, then they're free to develop their own civilization in their own space as long as they don't threaten others. We're not trying to control everyone, Veltar. We're just ensuring that no one can use their power to harm innocents without consequence." Through the conference room windows, the rebuilt New Geneva station stretched toward the stars. Children played in gardens that had once been battlefields. Scientists worked on cures for diseases that had once been weapons. Diplomats negotiated agreements based on mutual respect rather than mutual fear. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was everything the galaxy could have been centuries ago, if different choices had been made. As Veltar prepared to return to Etherian space with his report, Dr. Kim handed him a small crystal containing the complete human historical archives. "Share this with your people," she said. "All of it. The good and the bad, the triumphs and the failures. Let them understand how we got here, and why we can never go back to the way things were." "Will you ever forgive us?" Veltar asked quietly. "For not helping when you needed it most? For choosing safety over justice?" Dr. Kim looked out at the memorial garden where human children had once sung their last song. "Forgiveness isn't something you can ask for," she said. "It's something you earn through your actions. Show us that you've learned. Show us that you'll stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult or dangerous. Show us that the deaths of our children taught your people something about the cost of moral cowardice." She turned back to him with a sad smile. "Do that, and forgiveness will come naturally. Because despite everything that happened, we still believe that every species can choose to be better than they were." Veltar left human space that day carrying more than just a report for his government. He carried hope, fragile, carefully earned hope that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could still learn to live up to humanity's original dream of peaceful cooperation. Behind him, New Geneva Station continued its quiet work of proving that even after the darkest betrayals, it was still possible to build something beautiful from the ashes of trust. The universe had learned, finally and painfully, why humanity had spent 3 centuries saying, "Please don't make us mad." Now it was learning what happened when humanity stopped being angry and started building something better. The age of human patience was over. The age of human wisdom had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, that felt like hope instead of a threat.